Abraham Lincoln. Question 1. His name was Abraham Lincoln. He was born on the 12th of February 1809 and he died on the 15th of April 1865. Question 2. So, key events of his life. Now, he was president from the 12th of February 1861 to the 15th of April 1865. He led the United States in the American Civil War. I guess when I was doing my research, like I said, you want to use those prompt questions as a starting point, but I had to find out a bunch of other stuff in order to find out the context to understand what the events in his life means. Context means to understand the situation surrounding an event so you can understand that event a bit more. So when Abraham Lincoln became president, there were some states in the southern part of the United States, which were called the Confederate States, who didn't agree with his policies. And a big part of this, a big sticking point in this argument was, as some of you would probably know from what you've learned at school already, sadly a lot of people in the United States at the time were being held as slaves. And that means that they weren't allowed to be free and do what they want, and they were made to do work without pay and were treated quite badly. This is a thing about history. Sometimes we do discover quite sad things. What I would say is, in terms of this, it's important that we remember these things and we try to make sure that they never happen again. So, Abraham Lincoln became president. When he became president, a civil war broke out between the North, which was called the Union, and the South, which was called the Confederates. And the southern states did not want to do things the way most people in the Union did, and they didn't want to free the slaves. So that was a big event in his life, and eventually the Union and Abraham Lincoln won the Civil War. The next key event that I found, bear in mind here guys, I have tried to make this as concise as possible, meaning I've tried to slim down my report so that you guys don't have to listen to me talking for ages, but when you do yours, feel free to put a lot more detail and make it as long as you like. The next key event that I thought I'd mention is a thing called the Emancipation Proclamation. This was like a document or a statement to proclaim. A proclamation means to tell everyone. So the Emancipation Proclamation, which was released on the 1st of January 1863, said that all the slaves should be freed. Unfortunately, it didn't happen overnight. It took a few more years before the 13th Amendment was added to United States Constitution. The Constitution is a list of rules that the country has that everyone needs to follow, and an amendment means to change or to improve something, yeah? So when they feel like something needs to be changed, they'll add an amendment to their list of rules. And the 13th Amendment was that all the slaves would be freed. So that was a key event in his life. He played a big role in that. Another thing I thought I'd mention is a thing called the Gettysburg Address, which is a famous speech that Abraham Lincoln made. He famously starts the speech by saying, 77 years ago, he was referring to the inception of the United States when they became independent from the British Empire. And in this speech, he talks about all men being created equal. So basically, for someone of the time, he was someone who did promote equality compared to a lot of others who were alive then. The final key event is his assassination on the 15th of April 1865. Sadly, one day he went to the theatre to watch a play. Someone came and shot him. So obviously some people were still unhappy about his policies. Now, so that's question 1 and question 2. Question 3. I might just mention there that when I was doing that question, I did have to think about my use of the significance skill there, yeah, to decide which events were more important and which were actually affecting history and which weren't. So, next question, what were the consequences of their actions? So, you could argue that the role he played in the Civil War and the freedom of the slaves led to the beginning of the formation of the modern United States. And as we all know, the United States became a big, powerful country in the world afterwards, for better or worse, and they played a big role in World War II, for example. So the fact that he was involved in the formation of the modern United States is quite a big consequence of his life. Winning the Civil War, that was a big consequence that had an effect on the rest of the United States and ultimately the world. The freedom of the slaves, that's quite a major consequence. You know, we don't know whether that would have necessarily happened or at that time if it wasn't for the role that Abraham Lincoln played. So that would be another consequence of his actions, and you can see how that affected lots of people at the time and, you know, affected the way society thought about equality and basically how all humans deserve to be treated equally and with respect. Yeah, so another consequence would be that he kind of promoted equality. Certainly, not that he was perfect, but certainly better than most people did at the time. So let's look at... So, hopefully you guys would have noticed there that when I was trying to answer that question, I was thinking about the causes and the consequences, okay? Now, do you think this person is historically significant? I've touched on it a little bit, but I would, in the previous questions, but I would say yes, he was a very historically significant person. Why though, guys? Why was he significant? If you think about the things I just spoke about, the actions he took had a major effect. Winning the Civil War, the 13th Amendment of the United States, the Gettysburg Address, all of these things had quite a big impact on society, America, and therefore the world. So that makes him a historically significant person. He changed the way people think and the way society functions, okay? So that makes him quite significant. That makes him important because he had an effect on the history of the world, okay? Interesting facts. So I found out that he was 6'4", which I suppose is quite interesting because he was quite a tall man, especially at the time. He created a national banking system in the United States. To be honest, guys, I knew some of this stuff already, but I didn't know that, and I found that very interesting because that kind of led to the formation of the beginnings of the formation of the modern American economy. Also, apparently he liked to tell stories and jokes a lot, so that's quite interesting. There's one more thing here, and we need to think about another skill that we learn, we practice when we're doing history, called veracity, and that's whether you can verify, whether you can say something's definitely true or a reliable piece of information. But apparently, so I'm going to tell you this, but we can take it with a pinch of salt. We don't know whether it's definitely true, but I thought it was worth mentioning because it's quite weird. Apparently, it's claimed that he told his bodyguard before he was assassinated that he had a dream that he was going to be assassinated. Whoa, that's weird. But obviously, we'll take that with a pinch of salt because we don't know whether that was definitely true, but it was quite interesting. All that's left for me to do is to give my opinion. And when I'm doing this, I'm going to try and draw on all of my other answers to the questions, okay? So my opinion overall would be that he was a very influential person because of the factors that I've already spoken about. He actually did have a big impact on the history of the United States, and because of the nature of how the United States developed afterwards, I guess you could argue that that influenced the whole history of the world. And I'd say in the context of the time when he was alive, he was probably quite a good force in the world and promoted equality and stuff, even though, you know, everyone wasn't necessarily treated equally straight away afterwards. It's probably something we're still working on a little bit. But ultimately, I think he was a positive force in the world. So that's my opinion. Hopefully, you guys can see that through using those prompt questions and thinking about the use of those two skills, I was able to actually find out quite a lot about my person and practice my historical thinking. Now, you guys can do your work in the form of a written report, a Word document that you could upload to Google Classroom, or you could create a poster maybe, or it'd be awesome if some of you could create a video presentation like me, okay? I'll be looking forward to seeing what you guys produce. Good luck, bye.